You think you are standing on solid ground and that humanity is the undisputed apex predator of this planet? You are wrong. Try visiting Australia, a place where a fully armed regiment of the Royal Australian Artillery, equipped with heavy machine guns and thousands of rounds of ammunition, once had to wave the white flag and surrender to a flock of flightless birds. And believe it or not, that is not even the craziest thing about this accursed continent. Hold on, do not scroll away just yet, because the truth behind that military humiliation is more thrilling than a Hollywood action movie. Not only that, did you know Australia is home to an animal that poops out perfect square bricks like Lego pieces, and another creature that looks so cute it is always smiling, but will ruthlessly throw its own baby at a predator just to save its own skin? It sounds like I'm making this up, but I swear on my reputation as a storyteller, every single word is 100% true. All the mind-blowing secrets of this upside-down land will be exposed in today's video. Do not forget to hit like and subscribe right now so you do not miss your ticket to the weirdest zoo on the planet.
Let us rewind the clock to 1932 to witness one of the most hilarious stains on military history, an event officially recorded in textbooks with the majestic title of the Great Emu War. After World War I, Australian veterans returned home and were given land by the government to grow wheat. Everything seemed fine until 20,000 emus decided that these wheat fields looked much tastier than the dry scrub of the Outback. These birds did not just eat. They trampled fences, opening the way for thousands of rabbits to flood in and finish the job. Desperate, the farmers begged the government for help. The Minister of Defense at the time, Sir George Pearce, perhaps a bit too confident in military might, decided to send Major G.P.W. Meredith, along with soldiers armed with 2 Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition, to deal with the birds. They thought it would be a massacre, like shooting ducks in a barrel. But they were dead wrong, these emus. Seemed to have been trained in advanced guerrilla warfare tactics. When the soldiers opened fire, instead of panicking and bunching up, the emus immediately scattered in all directions, running at speeds of up to 50 kilometers per hour. Their thick skin and dense feathers acted like natural Kevlar armor, making bullets seem useless unless they hit a vital spot. Major Meredith later admitted with bitterness that if the Australian Army had a division of men as tough and resilient as these birds, they could conquer the world. The peak of the humiliation came when the Army decided to mount a machine gun on a truck to chase the birds down. But they forgot how rough the Australian terrain is. The truck bounced and shook so violently that the gunner could not aim at anything, and eventually the birds left them eating dust in the end, after wasting thousands of rounds of ammo. The Royal Australian Artillery only managed to take down a few hundred birds. The government had to order a retreat to avoid wasting more budget and facing further embarrassment. The emus won a glorious victory and continued to destroy the crops like great conquerors. This is perhaps the only war in human history where the animal kingdom won a decisive victory against modern firearms. If you think the emu is too smart and cunning, nature balanced the scales by giving Australia another animal that sits at the complete opposite end of the intelligence spectrum, the koala. This marsupial is famous worldwide for its cuteness, but few people know that they possess one of the smoothest brains in the animal kingdom, quite literally. The brain of a koala lacks the folds and grooves found in humans or other intelligent mammals. These folds are where neurons are packed to process complex information. But a koala brain is as smooth as a raw chicken breast. This leads to a truly ridiculous phenomenon. Koalas cannot recognize food if it is not in its usual place. Their only food source is eucalyptus leaves. If you pick a branch of eucalyptus and put it in front of a koala, it will eat. But if you pluck those leaves off the branch and put them on a plate in front of it, The koala will stare at the plate with utter confusion and could starve to death right next to a pile of food simply because it does not understand that leaves on a plate are still leaves. In its programming, the logic is simple. If it is not attached to a branch, it is not food. This stupidity also stems from their terrible diet. Eucalyptus leaves are not only extremely low in nutrition, but are also full of toxins. To digest this toxic salad, the koala's body burns a huge amount of energy, leaving them with almost no power for thinking or moving. That is why koalas sleep up to 20 hours a day. The other 4 hours are spent eating and staring into the void. You could say koalas have survived until today not because they are smart, but because their meat smells so strongly of eucalyptus oil and has zero nutritional value that predators do not even bother eating them. They are living proof that sometimes being useless and tasting terrible is a fantastic survival strategy, leaving the sleepyheads in the trees. Let us look down at the ground to meet a brilliant civil engineer who is equally bizarre. The wombat on the outside, a wombat looks like a walking fluff ball, chubby and gentle. But do not let that appearance fool you. This is the only animal on Earth capable of pooping out cube-shaped feces. Yes, you heard that right, perfectly square bricks like dice. Scientists spent years decoding this mystery. Why would nature give a wombat a brick mold at the end of its digestive tract? The answer lies in territory. Wombats are very territorial and mark their space with their waste. However, they live in environments full of rocks and logs. If their poop was round or cylindrical like other animals, it would easily roll away. So, over millions of years of evolution, the wombat's intestines developed special grooves that contract to compress the waste into square blocks right before it exits the body. Thanks to this, they can stack these smelly bricks into little towers to warn off enemies without fear of the wind blowing them away. Every night, a single wombat can produce up to 100 of these bricks. Imagine, if humans had this ability, the construction industry would collapse. But wombats do not just have magic. Intestines, they also possess buns of steel. The skin and cartilage on a wombat's rear end are extremely thick and hard, almost impossible to bite through. When chased by a predator like a dingo, the wombat will dive headfirst into its burrow and block the entrance with its butt. The predator will uselessly scratch and bite at this living shield. Even worse, if a stupid predator tries to shove its head into the gap above the wombat's back, the wombat will use its powerful legs to push up, crushing the enemy's skull against the ceiling of the burrow with its own butt, a rather undignified death for any predator. If wombats are stoic warriors, quokkas are the beauty queens of the animal kingdom. Living mainly on Rottenest Island, quokkas are dubbed the happiest animals on Earth because their jaw structure makes them look like they are always smiling. They are incredibly friendly and willing to approach humans for selfies. Those photos of smiling quokkas have melted millions of hearts on social media. However, behind that angelic smile is the worst mother in the solar system. When a mother quokka is carrying a baby in her pouch and encounters a dangerous predator like a snake or a fox, her survival instinct triggers a ruthless action. The mother quokka will relax her pouch muscles, causing the baby to fall out onto the ground, while the predator is distracted by the fresh snack looking confused on the floor. The mother uses that opportunity to run away. It sounds cruel, but from an evolutionary perspective, it is a necessary trade-off. An adult mother quokka can reproduce again, but if both mother and child die, the lineage ends. So, sacrificing the child to save the mother is the strategy this adorable animal chose. So next time you see a photo of a quokka smiling, remember that behind that smile might be the memory of a child left behind as bait so mom could live to take another selfie with you. Australia is not just weird because of its native animals, but also because of the ecological disasters humans created when trying to play God with nature. Would you believe that an animal imported to save crops became a brutal invader, turning the continent into a toxic battlefield? And would you believe that going to the toilet in Australia is sometimes like playing Russian roulette, where one moment of not checking the bowl could cost you a painful bite in your most sensitive areas? The journey to discover the madness of Australia has only just begun. In the next part, we will dive into the cane toad, the greatest mistake of Australian agriculture, and the reason why Australians have a habit of flushing the toilet before sitting down, a habit born from primal fear. These tragic yet hilarious stories will surely make you laugh and shiver. At the same time, if you think the Emu War was the peak of Australian absurdity, you are underestimating the capacity of humans to make terrible decisions. In 1935, Australian bureaucrats faced a problem. Beetles were eating the sugar cane crops in Queensland instead of using pesticides or manual labor. Someone had the brilliant idea to import a biological weapon from Hawaii. That weapon was the cane toad. They brought in 102 toads, thinking these amphibians would be the saviors of the sugar industry. It turned out to be one of the worst ecological decisions in the history of mankind. Here is the punchline that makes this tragedy hilarious. The beetles lived at the top of the sugarcane stalks. The toads, being toads, cannot fly and are terrible climbers. They lived on the ground. The two species never even met. The toads completely ignored the beetles and looked around at the Australian ecosystem, which was full of slow-moving, naive marsupials and insects that had no idea what a toad was, and said, "This is an all-you-can-eat buffet." Since they had no natural predators in Australia, the cane toads multiplied at a terrifying rate. Today, there are estimated to be over 200 million of them. But it gets worse. These toads are toxic. They have glands on their shoulders that secrete a milky poison capable of killing a dog, a snake, or even a crocodile in minutes. The native animals of Australia, having never seen a toad before, tried to eat them and died instantly. It is an ecological massacre. The toads are now evolving longer legs just so they can invade new territory faster. It is like an alien invasion movie, but instead of lasers, the aliens use warty skin and pure incompetence to conquer the world. But the cane toad is not the only invader that has made itself at home. When you think of Australia, you probably think of kangaroos and koalas. You definitely do not think of camels. Yet, here is a mind-bending fact. Australia has the largest population of wild camels in the world. In the 19th century, camels were imported from India and Afghanistan to help explore the vast, dry outback. They were the perfect vehicles for the desert. But when the internal combustion engine and trains arrived, the camels were fired. Their owners simply cut them loose into the wild. Instead of dying, the camels looked at the Australian desert and thought it was paradise. They thrived, they multiplied. Now, over 1 million feral camels roam the interior, causing chaos, drinking precious water holes dry, and destroying infrastructure. But here is the ultimate irony. Australia now exports camels back to the Middle East. Yes, you heard that correctly. Australia sells sand camels to Saudi Arabia. Why? Because the Australian camels are genetically isolated. They are considered some of the purest, disease-free camels left on Earth, while camels in other parts of the world have been domesticated and mixed for centuries. The Saudis buy them for meat and for racing. It is the only economic win in a long history of environmental blunders. Now, let us look away from the ground and towards the sky in most parts of the world. If you look up, you might see birds, clouds, or rain in Australia. If the weather conditions are just right, you might see spiders falling from the heavens. This is not a horror movie script. It is a very real phenomenon. Called ballooning, millions of baby spiders, in an attempt to disperse and find new homes, climb to the highest point of vegetation and release strands of silk. The wind catches these silk parachutes and carries the spiders up into the atmosphere. Sometimes they travel a few meters, sometimes they travel hundreds of kilometers. When the weather forces them all down at once, it results in what locals call angel hair. Entire towns wake up to find fields, houses, and trees, blanketed in a thick layer of sticky, white spider web. It looks like snow until you realize the snow is moving, and it is made of millions of tinier arachnids. For anyone with arachnophobia, this is literally hell on earth. Residents have 2 shovel spider webs off their lawns only in Australia. Do you need a snow shovel for spiders? Speaking of spiders, let us talk about the one place where you should feel safe, the bathroom. In Australia, going to the toilet is a tactical operation. You do not just walk in and sit down. That is a rookie mistake that could cost you dearly. You have to perform the Aussie inspection. This involves lifting the seat and checking under the rim. Why? Because the redback spider, a close relative of the black widow, loves the underside of toilet seats. It is dark, it is protected, and it attracts insects. There have been numerous documented cases, even immortalized in Australian folk songs, of people getting bitten on their most sensitive areas while answering the call of nature. A bite from a redback causes intense pain, sweating, and nausea. It is not exactly how you want to spend your Tuesday morning. But it is not just spiders. If you live in the more tropical areas, you might open the lid to find a green tree frog staring back at you from inside the bowl. They like the water because it is cool, and let me tell you, there is nothing quite as heart-stopping as the sensation of something cold and slimy jumping against your bottom when you flush. In Australia, the toilet flushes you. This constant state of alertness has created a nation of people who are biologically incapable of sitting on a toilet without checking it first. Even when they travel to other countries, it is a form of PTSD, post-toilet stress disorder. But the dangers of the bathroom are nothing compared to the sheer, overwhelming scale of the land itself. You might think you understand how big Australia is, but you don't. The map lies to you. We are about to leave the world of animals and enter the world of geography that defies logic. A place where a single farm is bigger than entire European countries, and where a fence was built that is longer than the Great Wall of China, just to keep dogs out. And have you ever heard of a mountain that has been burning underground for 6,000 years? No, it is not a volcano. It is something much stranger. Buckle up, because in the next part, we are going to drive across the vast emptiness of the Outback, where the concept of distance loses all meaning. And the Earth itself seems to be trying to tell us something. To understand the sheer scale of Australia, we have to look at a construction project that makes human ambition look ridiculous. When the Chinese built the Great Wall, they did it to keep out the Mongol hordes. When the Australians built their version of a megastructure, they did it to keep out dogs. Welcome to the Dingo Fence. This is not just a fence. It is the longest continuous fence in the world. It stretches for over 5,600 kilometers. To put that into perspective, if you built this fence in Europe, it would stretch from London to Russia. If you built it in the United States, it would go from New York to Los Angeles, and still have plenty left over to wrap around Texas. And what is the purpose of this colossal engineering marvel? To separate the sheep from the dingoes. In the 19th century, sheep farming was the backbone of the economy. But dingoes loved the taste of expensive, woolly snacks. So, the government decided to split the continent in two. On one side, you have the sheep and the money. On the other side, you have the dingoes and the Wild West. Maintaining this fence is a full-time job for teams of people who spend their entire lives driving along the wire, fixing holes and shooting camels that crash into it. It is a physical line drawn in the sand that says, civilization ends here and the dog park begins there. But if the fence is big, the farms it protects are even bigger. Enter a creek station. In most parts of the world, a farm is a nice little plot of land with a barn and a tractor. In Australia, a creek station is a cattle station that is larger than the entire country of Israel. It is 7 times the size of the King Ranch in Texas. which Texans usually brag is the biggest thing ever. The station is so vast that you cannot muster cattle with horses. It takes weeks, and they have to use helicopters, light aircraft, and dirt bikes to find the cows. A cow could be born, live a full life, and die of old age on a creek station without ever seeing a human being or a fence. The staff who work there have to be their own mechanics, doctors, and pilots. If you want to borrow a cup of sugar from your neighbor, you better pack a lunch and fill up the gas tank, because they are a 3-hour drive away, while the surface of Australia is vast and dry. Underneath the ground, something ancient and sinister is happening. New South Wales is home to Mount Wingan, also known as Burning Mountain. But this is not a volcano. Volcanoes are dramatic and explosive. Burning Mountain is a slow, silent, relentless fire. Underneath the sandstone, a massive coal seam has been burning for approximately 6,000 years. Yes, you read that right. This fire started burning before the pyramids of Giza were built, before the invention of the wheel. And before the rise of Greek civilization, it was likely started by a lightning strike or a bushfire thousands of years ago, and it has just kept going, slowly eating its way through the coal deposit underground at a rate of 1 meter per year on the surface. The ground is hot to the touch. Smoke and sulfurous gases seep out of cracks in the earth, killing vegetation and turning the soil red and jagged. It looks like the surface of Mars. It is the longest-running fire known to man, and we have absolutely no way to put it out. We just have to wait for it to run out of fuel, which might take another few thousand years. But Australia is not all dust, fire, and giant fences. Nature also has a sense of style, specifically a very garish pop art sense of style. If you fly over the Research Archipelago off the coast of Western Australia, you will see the deep blue ocean, the white sand, the green forest, and then, suddenly, a lake the color of bubblegum pink. This is Lake Hillier. It looks like someone spilled millions of gallons of strawberry milkshake into a hole for years. Scientists were baffled. They thought maybe it was a trick of the light, or maybe runoff from the soil. But even if you scoop the water into a glass, it stays pink. The culprit, it turns out, is a specific type of microalgae called Dunaliella salina, along with pink bacteria that thrive in the incredibly salty water. The lake is 10 times saltier than the ocean. It is safe to swim in if you do not mind smelling like a brine shrimp afterwards. But it remains one of the most surreal visual contrasts on the planet, a bright pink spot in a land of rugged browns and greens. So, we have covered the animals that defy evolution, the insects that terrify the brave, and the geography that mocks human scale. You might think we have seen it all. But you would be wrong, because as weird as the Australian nature is, the Australian people and their culture are even weirder. We are about to close the book on nature and open the file on the humans of Down Under. In the next episode, we will dive into a country where a prime minister went swimming and vanished forever, and the nation named a swimming pool after him. We will meet a man who created his own country because he hated taxes, and we will find out why Australians eat a black paste that looks like axle grease and call it delicious. The madness is about to get political. Stay tuned for episode 2, where we learn that in Australia, even the government is a bit of a joke.